GME isn't the only thing going to the moon. Game Pass could be hitching a ride as well. And it really depends on when you are listening to this, because as of the time of the recording, GME has actually crashed back down into planet Earth, mostly at the hand of hedge funds who are now manipulating the market, in my opinion at least, controlling some of the stocks, whatever. We're here to talk about Game Pass. Here we are because I think Game Pass actually might be about ready to hitch a ride to the moon. So this week, Microsoft released their earnings, which I talked about earlier. But one thing they hadn't talked about when I recorded my video was Game Pass. And after doing a little bit of a deep dive into some of the facts and figures and numbers of Game Pass, Microsoft is sitting on a potential massive boost to the revenue for the Xbox gaming org. And I think this is a pretty big deal, and it's going to fuel some of the moves that we see here into 2021 and going forward. But first, let's just talk about what Microsoft actually did announce. They announced 18 million Game Pass subscribers. Now, I know some people were expecting 20, and it's across the board, but we're still pretty early on in the infancy of the growing of this platform, and so we don't quite have a good understanding of the growth rate or saturation or penetration across different various metrics. So that's what I was trying to do here, is that understand what is the penetration rate of Game Pass and Game Pass Ultimate into the Xbox Live ecosystem. So we have a couple numbers that are going to help us do this, and for the first time I think we have 3 good data points that are really going to lay this out. So let's talk about them. So Game Pass growth, we have heard 3 different data points. We heard 10 million in May, and I'm using the end of May. They actually announced it April 29th. 15 million roughly in September, and 18 million in January. And now we can also overlay this data with some other data points Microsoft has announced. Back in that May timeline, they announced that they had 90 million Xbox Live monthly users. And then earlier this week, I should say, they announced they had 100 million active monthly Xbox Live users. Now, we didn't get a number for September, but if we have 90 in May and 100 now, I think we can split the difference there and say that's roughly 95 million Xbox Live users. Now, keep in mind that Xbox Live user counts kind of ebb and flow with the seasons. There's going to be more people using them in the winter or using the service in the colder months and fewer in the summer. And obviously everything going on in the world right now, it's probably inflated a bit just because everybody's stuck at home and they're dying for entertainment at this point. So here we go. Let's just start breaking apart these numbers because we can start to see some things in the data. Now keep in mind that not every Xbox Live monthly user isn't paying. They're not always paying, right? They could be just a free user. They could potentially be on another platform. And also to that point, they could potentially be on PC. This is not strictly console data. And I'm just trying to get all this out of the way before we dive into the facts and figures. So here is the first chart. So we have Xbox Live total monthly active users. Now you can see starting on the left, we have 80 plus 10 because that's 90, meaning 10 million Game Pass subscribers, 15, and then 18. What this chart here is showing here is actually of the total install base of Xbox Live monthly active users. That's total, that's paying, that's non-paying, and everything else. You can look and see how many are now actually Game Pass subscribers. So basically the orange are people who are guaranteed paying Microsoft for the service. Now, they might have rolled gold in, but at some point they have paid money along the way. The blue represents the opportunity for Microsoft to convert people to Game Pass. Now, that could be more than likely Game Pass Ultimate, but one of the 2 SKUs, there's a lot of potential here. And this is what I was trying to hint at from the beginning, is that this last quarter, Microsoft said that they had about $1 billion in revenue from Game Pass, first party and third party titles all combined. If you look at this chart right here, you can see the massive potential that is out there for Microsoft to capitalize upon a user base that they already have, which is the 82 million on the far right, and try to convert them into Game Pass subscribers. Now, I don't want to say this is why Microsoft jacked up the price of Xbox Live Gold or tried to double it and then went backwards, but I certainly think that it played a factor in that they went and looked at this chart and said, wow, that's a lot of opportunity. How can we, you boost the rate at which people are adopting? Now, there's another chart here that I created that shows the percentage of penetration, if you will. It's the same chart as we see here, but just converted into an overall percentage of it. It's just a different way of looking at the data, but you can see that Game Pass penetration has gone from 11% to 15% to this most recent quarter at 18%, which means they have roughly 1 in 5. It's actually less than that. Less than 1 in 5 users are on the Game Pass plan, which means they have 4 out of 5 users roughly that they still need to convert. And that is I know this, I keep saying this is a really big opportunity, but it honestly is. And Microsoft is looking at these numbers and thinking, man, how in the world can we continue this momentum? Because there's 2 buckets here of people. There's the people who are in the blue that they need to keep growing because that is the top of their sales funnel. Anybody in that blue area is now a targeted user to become a Game Pass subscriber. That is how the marketing world works. They say blue is the sales funnel, and then obviously orange are the customers. So they want to keep growing the blue as much as they can because they know that as of right now, 1 in 5 of those people, roughly speaking, will convert over to Game Pass. They want to grow that 1 in 5. They'd love it to be 5 out of 5, but it probably won't. Now there is one figure from this that we don't quite know, because typically the way at least I look at this chart is blue is non-paying, and that's not completely true. Xbox Live Gold customers are bundled into the blue, but the people in the orange are paying the most amount of money towards Microsoft. And so it doesn't matter if they go from Gold to Game Pass, in theory they will eventually boost the revenue. Of course, if they go from non-paying Xbox Live into the orange, then they will be paying quite a bit more. So this is really, really good news for Microsoft. But there's some other things too that we need to take into consideration here. For example, there are other places that Game Pass can grow. There's other places that Xbox Live can grow, right? Right now, Game Pass is on the console. We know that. That's what most people think about when they think Game Pass, but it's also on the PC, right? Don't forget about that. Now, I don't know the actual figures, but my gut would tell me that the usage of Xbox Game Pass on PC is less than that on the console. I still think console is probably the primary place that Game Pass is sold, but there's a massive other market that Microsoft is trying to bring online that will allow Game Pass to grow even further, and that is mobile, right? There are Xbox Live users technically on mobile, but as of right now, I don't know if there's any Game Pass users solely playing only on mobile, but this is an area that Microsoft is moving to with their xCloud, or as they'd like me to call it, cloud game or cloud streaming service. So Microsoft has a massive potential. We already know that the install base for the user install base on the mobile side is in the billions, as opposed to a couple 100 million on the pure console side. Now, the console side is going to have a much higher uptake rate of Game Pass compared to the mobile users, but even if they can get a fraction of the iOS and Android install base to join Xbox Live, or more importantly, Game Pass through cloud streaming, that is a massive upside for Xbox as a service, or the Xbox brand. Now, you might be wondering, Brad, why am I doing this? Why am I talking about this? The reason being, from a hardware perspective, from an Xbox organization perspective, this was a big quarter. This is the first time that they hit $5 billion in revenue in a quarter. Now, that is good. That's great. It's kind of expected, right? You have a new console, they're premium priced, and they sold every single one that they could make. But unlike previous generations, where it's typically somebody buys a console, hopefully they buy Live, and then they might buy some titles or whatever. The software as a service is what Microsoft wants everything in their company to be running on. This is a future for Microsoft. This is also a direction for the Xbox org that is going to allow them to not only not survive inside the Microsoft ecosystem, but truly gives them a northern star where the platform is headed. I don't think they're getting rid of consoles. I'm not saying that, but Microsoft wants software as a service because the margins in that arena are massive and they have the big potential. And Microsoft right now is just getting its feet wet with trying to establish that install base. I've heard that before that they look at Netflix, and I know the analogy is tired that Game Pass is the Netflix of gaming, but Netflix just passed 200 million subscribers. Microsoft firmly believes that Game Pass can be, and potentially already is, headed down that same route. And if so, the upside again for Microsoft is massive. You got to remember, while there is overhead and infrastructure that needs to be in place for Game Pass, it's already existing, right? Microsoft is just adding people to a service and platform that is already there. And so the margins for them, provided they're making money on the service, which is a whole nother conversation, is very, very good. Now, the question becomes is, what is going to entice people to join Game Pass? The pretty obvious statement here is, well, it needs games, right? And that's why Microsoft has been buying studios. They want a regimented release of potentially even monthly, but I bet it's more like quarterly big name titles coming to the service to keep it fresh, to keep people happy, to keep people subscribed to the service. Now, we're making the assumption that new IP to Game Pass is what's going to keep people there. I think it's a very good assumption. I don't know if Microsoft fully has the data yet, but there's definitely something to that idea that, hey, new content into Game Pass keeps people subscribed. That's one economic lever that they're using, and it's why they purchased Bethesda. Fun fact about that, Microsoft made about $15 billion in revenue, or net income, I should say, in the last quarter, which means that they already have made the money that is going to be required to buy Bethesda in a single quarter 2 times over effectively just in that last quarter. So I think more acquisitions are definitely on the horizon for Microsoft as they try to line up effectively an editorial calendar, as we would say in the journalism world, for these gaming releases. Microsoft is sitting on a goldmine for Game Pass, and it's already showing signs of life. The fact that they were adding roughly 1 million-ish people to Game Pass from May until January is huge for Microsoft. It's huge for Xbox. It's huge for Phil Spencer, because it's starting to say that, hey, the narrative that we've created around this service is starting to materialize. Now, you can very easily make the argument that the reason a lot of that happened, and I'm definitely falling into that bucket, is that you could roll over Xbox Live Gold into Game Pass at a 1-to-1 transfer ratio. That is more than likely what jump-started a lot of this growth. That being said, once you're in there, Microsoft is hoping that you're going to be really, really sticky and you're going to stay with the service because it's a good value. And I've argued time and time again that it is a good value. But when you look at the potential here of growth for Game Pass, it is huge. Microsoft sees these numbers and they are now starting to really aggressively try to go after the growth. We saw that with the tinkering of gold, and I don't think that we're done there. I think we're going to see more things that Microsoft is going to try to do to get more people from the blue into the orange. The question is when, where, how, and what. Now, those are a lot of questions, but it's just trying to understand the narrative. We know that IP coming in, we know they might tinker with gold. They're going to try to make it a better value. They're going to try to entice you to join. And Microsoft, I've never seen them candidly so excited about some of the new Xbox stuff. Yes, they're always excited about the hardware and all that, but Game Pass is a whole different can of worms for Microsoft. This is something new. This is something that is genuinely driving Xbox forward, and I think it's painting a really bright future for the platform and everything else. So as we learn more, I will obviously keep you guys updated, but make sure to hit that subscribe button because the only BS on this channel is me.